I'm going to speak now on distribution systems, particularly the Wolseley ones, where we have 4 different types here. All distribution systems have TV distribution systems have 2 basic applications. The first thing is to amplify the signal, and the second purpose is to distribute the signal to multiple rooms. Okay, so if we take the Wolseley one here, we have a 2, a 4, a 6 and an 8-way distribution system. Now there's 2 basic categories within distribution systems. There's ones with return, which are almost always F-type, so they're bidirectional, and this really means is, with these things, not only do they distribute the signal to a number of rooms, but they also let a return signal, i.e. a sky eye, pass the signal back to the box. So with this, let's say, distribution system here, you can connect the sky eyes in a number of rooms, each of which is capable of feeding signal back to the skybox to change the channels from a remote room. So this is, the Wolseley ones are single input, and these, the perception one here, this is a bypass one as well, and it has twin inputs. There's a VHF and a UHF input, and then we see a distribution system here like the perception one, which is coax, and it has no bypass on it. Okay, so when would we use the different ones? These ones here we would use to distribute signal to a number of rooms if it's in a UHF only area, and if we've combined a UHF VHF input into a skybox, or if it's purely a skybox being distributed to a number of rooms. This one here would be ideal in a UHF only area, when a UHF area is being run into a skybox and off to another rooms. It is not suitable because of the twin inputs. If you have a VHF UHF input into a skybox and then that signal being distributed out, because the VHF and UHF signal at that stage will already have been pre-combined, and you'll need a single input, where this one will actually have 2 inputs on it. And this one here is ideal for just doing aerials. You could also run sky output to other rooms, but there would be no possibility of running a sky eye with it. Okay. The main advantage of this, also with this one here, there's twin inputs on it. So if you're using this in a UHF area, you just use 1 input. If you're using it in a UHF and a VHF area, you would use both inputs on it, and it would save the use of a need for a diplexer. And the big advantage of that would be, equally this is the case with this one, where you wouldn't need a diplexer. Diplexers are costly, number 1, and then number 2 advantage of this particular system would be that diplexers also cause a certain amount of signal strength loss. Okay, so basically what we would do is we would take an input from, let's say, an area or a skybox here, and with these F-type connectors, you can see you use this type of connector, which is F-type, which will simply screw on to the input. And so you take the feed from your aerial or your skybox, it comes in through here, and then you take a feed off of there to feed the television in an additional room. So here's a cable that I've made up as an example. So we simply take an output from here, and we have this cable, and we connect it to a television, and the picture that's being fed there, equally we can feed it to things. So you need to, when you're deciding what type of you should buy, whether a 2, a 4, a 6 or an 8-way, you need to think how many televisions do I have right now, and also long term, how many televisions am I going to have in my house. If you're not going to have a skybox on the system, or you don't think sky eyes are of great importance to you, something like this perception system here is very, very advantageous, simply because it's cheaper than the other ones. It has the same level of amplification, and it works well. As well as that, with this particular type of this, unlike the units with bypass, this is actually capable of powering a master amplifier up underneath the aerial on the UHF output, so that's quite advantageous as well. I'd save on the purchase of a power unit in certain circumstances. The perception one here will work quite well, but the one limitation it would have, I would say, over the Wolseley single input one is, if you have a VHF, UHF signal and you fed it into a skybox, it just won't work then, because at that point the distribution system needs to have a single input, so you can keep both the VHF and the UHF being fed through a single input, because the signal has already been combined. All of these units here that we're showing you cover the full VHF, UHF range. The only product that we sell that does not cover the full UHF VHF range is the Perception two-way distribution, which is this one here, and this covers the UHF range only. So that's, you know, there's a number of transmitters in Ireland like Tree Rock and Cairnhill where that's not a disadvantage because they're broadcasting UHF only. And indeed, over the next year or two, as the country slowly moves away from analogue and into the digital age, it'll only broadcast in UHF, so that won't be a disadvantage at that point either. So basically, this one here comes in a 4 and an 8 way on our website. This one here comes in a 2, a 4 and an 8 way, and then the Wolseley ones we stock in a 2, a 4, a 6 and an 8 way. And in terms of cost, generally these ones, the IEC ones, are always about 20% cheaper than the F-type ones here, and the Perception ones are generally cheaper but just as good as the Wolseley systems, but they do have what can sometimes be a disadvantage that it has a single input, although in other circumstances where you're using it to feed 2 areas directly in, it's actually advantageous to have twin inputs. So hopefully that gives you some idea. So with all the systems, it's the basic thing. In this case here, we're talking about this one, in terms of the inputs, you feed a UHF aerial into this port, a VHF aerial into this port, and when the signal feeds out from each one of these, the VHF and UHF have already been combined. And that's it.